Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 7 of On the Flank. My name is John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick here. Say hello, Joe.
Hello, everybody.
And when it comes to analysis, we are on the flank. This week's special. Not only it's the first day of October here. We're deep into fall now. But we've gained some more listeners. Luckily for us, shout out to OW Recall, the Twitter account that is a nice little podcast directory ran by Overwatch League Network people. They tweeted out our Twitter and the link to our podcast alongside some other pretty big podcasts. The Game House's podcast, Watch House, and Tactical Crouch, the new Owl Daily Show podcast. So we're up there with the big names, Joe. How you feeling?
We're on our way. It's going good.
Lots of pressure this week, Joe. Lots of pressure.
Yeah, right? I suppose.
Yeah. And this week, with the most listeners ever, we have not as much to talk about, apparently. No events whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which means we get to go right into the news this week. And we won't have events for like a month. So right into the news right away. Probably, I think this happened almost immediately after we recorded our podcast last Monday. Nate Nancer, he had a nice little interview at the esports bar in Miami talking about the Overwatch League. Of course, if you don't know, Nate Nancer is the commissioner of the Overwatch League. And he had a lot of talking points. It was a pretty long interview. He talked about lots of things, lots of non-informational, some good new information as well. He confirmed that they're going with 2 divisions of 10 teams each next season. Of course, the 20 teams. Some people were thinking maybe they'll go 4 divisions of 5, but it seems like they're going to go 2 divisions of 10, so just add 4 teams to the Pacific and Atlantic each. Season 2 confirmed our suspicions that it will start in quarter 1 of 2019, just like Season 1 started in quarter 1 of 2018. We don't know the exact date. That could be January, February, even maybe March. But it is confirmed to start right at the beginning of 2019, it seems. And he confirmed that China will definitely get a win next season.
That's we're gonna hold him to that now.
Yeah, if they don't, that'd be hilarious if they somehow tied. If they added ties or something like that, and they all just tied against each other all the time.
Yeah. Although I guess now that there is more than one team, eventually they'll have to play each other. So
yeah, exactly. That would be the only way, as if it was ties. He talked about stage finals and playoffs, things like that a little bit. He didn't touch on like changes too much, but he did want to make stage playoffs even bigger next year, is what he did mention at the end. More teams, more money is what he said. So right now, stage playoffs are at 4 teams. I'm guessing since we have 20 teams now, maybe he bumps that up to 8, puts more money on it, something like that. I think this is we talked about league formats a couple weeks ago. I think this is the main point that I want to sort of talk to you about for a second here. What do you think more teams, more money means for stage playoffs and where he wants to take them?
I mean, overall, what it means for stage playoffs is that they'll be more significant to the teams playing in them. That they'll have more chances, to prove themselves off of the stage results against some of their opponents, but also obviously more money on the table means more resources for those good teams. We had lots of sort of spread out stuff last year, which was good. That there wasn't really a team that like super dominated in the playoffs, other than obviously New York was there several times, but yeah, more opportunities for lots of these teams, which again is good because of the larger size. we did talk a little bit last week again with this league format stuff, talking about like Dallas in stage four of last season that that they made stage four playoffs, but by that time it seemed, almost unnecessary or meaningless, to an extent because of how far they were behind in the overall standings.
Hmm.
But Nancer did specifically use that example of Dallas here in this interview, saying that was one of the things they liked about the stage playoffs, which is true. That's reasonable uh, to think about. So that seems like that's a feeling, that's an action they want to go for
Yeah,
again here in season two. Which yeah, that's definitely reasonable. That's definitely something that makes sense.
yeah.
Just to make sure that matches still have some sort of meaning.
Oh yeah, I mean, meaning not only to the fans but to the teams themselves. I think they're most happy with the idea and the idea they wanted to go with stages, with stage playoffs and whatnot, and putting money on it was that Dallas was not going to give up in stage four. I think they're most happy with the idea that despite Dallas having, oh, I believe, no possible chance of making the playoffs, basically, they still went out there and tried their hardest. I think that's what they like the most about Dallas making the stage four playoffs. And I think they really want to continue that because they don't want to make it, I don't know, like a league that has a lot of games means that games are going to mean less, because you can lose a game and you can still make playoffs and stuff like that. Um, so they want to make it so that teams play their heart out every game, um, and the stages allow that to happen. It makes it so every game does matter because while Dallas can't make the playoffs, overall, if they win this game, they do make stage four playoffs, so it means something to them. So I think that's why Nate really likes stage playoffs. My only worry with making stage playoffs and stage finals mean more is, and I think this happened last year, kind of, is making the grand finals mean less. The more like championship type opportunities you have, the less your big championship is going to mean. And we saw that with I saw that with League of Legends and LCS having the spring split and summer split every year and having a championship for each. Everybody was confused. They were like, okay, which one matters more? Does spring split even matter? Like it just the more championship opportunities you have, the more confused your fans are going to be on how much they actually mean. That's my only worry with it. Though besides that, I enjoy stage playoffs because, like Nate's saying, it makes Dallas and it makes these teams actually try in the end.
Yeah, which is what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the other problems with the grand finals and the playoffs in general this year was there was a lack of advertising and knowledge of it even going on. So that possibly could have been the reason why grand finals were maybe not as hype for most people this year. So maybe they're probably looking to change that up. Anything else to talk about on any other points you saw that were worth talking about with Nate here?
I don't think so, no. Other than I guess somebody quoted him once. He said, "If this conference, referring to the one he was speaking at here now about a week ago, was in a month, I would release the 2019 schedule," which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
So we might get that here in 3 or 4 weeks. Probably at BlizzCon.
yeah. I'm guessing
Uh,
BlizzCon. Last,
but
I'm hoping at BlizzCon they have another Owl panel. They had an Overwatch League panel last year at BlizzCon, and that's where they released the schedule and the preseason schedule too.
there you
Um,
go.
yeah, so I'm guessing that's a pretty big hint that Nate's going to be doing that at BlizzCon once again. So that's exciting. That in a month, we're going to have so much to talk about on that podcast. Imagine the World Cup and
The BlizzCon podcast.
the BlizzCon podcast. It's going to be like 5 hours long.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to some player signings. We got a lot of contenders player signings this week. We'll start with Florida Mayhem, their Mayhem Academy team. They have signed Apply to a two-way contract. as far as my opinion goes on this signing. Florida Mayhem need players, so this is a player. They did it. Any opinions on apply in this signing?
Yeah, there's he's coming from Mayhem Academy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just finished the season on that. So this is the well, it's the first official two-way player we're talking about. We've actually got I
Many
think
more.
at least one more this week. I don't know if Rascal is or not, um, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see exactly how that mechanic sort of plays out this season. I think from what Elk has talked about, spoiler alert, Elk is also on a two-way contract. Um, but from what Elk has talked about, it's something like he can play as much in in the actual Overwatch League as he wants, unless he plays up to like two contenders games, and then he can only play or and then there's a restriction on how many you can play in the major league or something. There's a whole bunch of uh, requirements that way. But just to see how teams are feeling that out, and what actually comes of that, I think is going to be really interesting going into this next season.
Yeah. Two-way contracts are very interesting as a fan of traditional sports. It reminds me a lot of MLB and minor leagues. There are contracts very similar to that and rules very similar to that. If you play a certain amount of minor league games or major league games, there's restrictions on how many of the other you can play. Basically, because the two-way contracts would just be the way to go if Elk could play unlimited contenders and Overwatch League games. Everybody would just sign two-way contracts to everybody. Um, it's because they would just. I mean, even like you could do it to like profit on the London Spitfire or something like that. Just sign them to a two-way contract, and then when London doesn't have a game, just send them down to contenders, and then the British Hurricane dominates. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, you gotta have rules for the two-way contract because that's a big advantage being able to use them in both leagues there. Yeah, so if we want to go more into the Elk signing, I know you're super excited about this. You Fusion fan. You want to talk about the Elk signed to Fusion two-way contract?
Yeah, I mean we mentioned it last week as a rumor, talked about it a little bit, so it has been confirmed now here in the last week. I think it was like Thursday or something. Elk announced it on his stream. Initially, actually, they Philadelphia Fusion came out that they had signed Elk to their proper Overwatch League roster in order to trade him to the Flyers for Gritty.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw that. So
I
yeah,
did.
for a while, Gritty was going to be on the Fusion,
Trade didn't go
but
through.
yeah, they wanted too much money.
Yeah,
But yeah, no. So yeah, same thing we talked about last week. Yeah, Elk is going to be good. We need a support rotation. Because we don't want to kill our supports because our supports are really good, including Elk now. So yeah, that's just good.
yeah.
And he'll definitely. I said this last week too. He'll definitely see more playing time than Joe Meister or Dayfly did.
I agree, especially with like we were talking about. Neptuno is a tired boy. He wants some rest. And luckily they brought Elk, and I think, and I really like the Fusion embracing the meme of trading him because I think alongside the rumor that Michael brought out, he also said most likely to trade him, and then he had a bunch of replies talking about why would they trade him and all this stuff, and they embraced it, saying that they were going to trade him for Gritty. It was of course a big meme at this point because he's a very scary mascot. Um, let's move on to another not as shocking pickup here. The San Francisco Shock pickup of Rascal from NRG, their academy team. Rascal, of course, he was in Overwatch League Season 1, a pretty big talent. I don't think anyone was shocked that they were gonna bring him up to the big leagues here. Yeah, I just keep saying shocked. It's not on purpose, guys. I swear. Rascal is, yeah. I mean, they've got a lot of DPS players now, but Rascal's pretty good. What do you think about this pickup?
I was trying to scroll through here, try to figure out if he's going two ways or not. Trying to find the announcement here. But yeah, in general, we've talked about the Shock's DPS. which is an interesting conversation. We may see more changes to that coming in, because again, they're back to four now. But yeah, it's you can't say much. You can't say that they've sacrificed much
Yeah.
bringing him on the team. That's only going to be good for them, I think. So
Oh yeah. Whether they trade him or just keep him on the team or trade someone else. I mean, it's fine. They've got Rascal now. He's big talent. And big Korean talent too, and everyone's looking for that Korean talent at this point. I think that's it for pickups this week. Yeah, that's all we got on here. Besides tons of course, Michael rumors that we don't really address Michael rumors too often unless they're pretty big. We wait until the official announcement happens, basically. Next, we got some more thingers going on here. The California Cup. We talked about it last week. I think there was mentioned a collegiate class. Did they mention college teams in the official announcement at first? I can't remember.
in the California Cup, no, or at least
Oh,
not that I noticed.
I don't know why. Maybe it's just that I heard this news and then I put them together or something. But yeah, they announced
I
that
don't know.
they're going to be collegiate teams. UCLA, UCI, California, and Triton Esports are all going to be there at the collegiate clash. Collegiate clash. So we get some college rivalries alongside Overwatch League rivalries, and me and Joe know tons about college rivalries, as we were both a part of the old Butler Esports. So what do you think about them adding some college competition to the California Cup?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, we talked about these teams, trying to make the most of their off season, trying to add, events for their fan engagement, keep the team on their toes, sort of a little bit. And so, Valiant Shock playing this home and home series, but also now being able to pull in, to be pretty good talent. I mean, some of these California teams are really good. I forget who, like, has won Tespa the last couple of years, but I know, uh, like, uh, some place in Canada, like Toronto or something, is really good, but also usually there's a California team or two or three in the
Oh
last
yeah.
few teams. But yeah, so given even that kind of exposure, granted, who knows if any of those students are headed towards Overwatch League careers, but being able to engage with the fans, being able to show this kind of content that otherwise probably wouldn't get seen by Valiant fans or by Shock fans necessarily, um, is really cool for them, and really cool for the teams, I think.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I would love for Butler to be in something like this, the Indiana Cup or something.
Yeah, at
Um,
some point.
yeah. But yeah, you see. I mean, these are the California teams are like known to be some of the best esports teams just because they're like the first adopters of esports almost just because California is filled with esports right now. So these teams are all really good, even though our League of Legends team did upset UCLA in CSL last year. That was a big upset. That was pretty
It's
cool.
true.
um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to some college competition. I'm a huge fan of college esports in general. So I think that's a win-win for everybody there. But another pairing here, the Valiant and Shock, of course, pairing together for the California Cup, and now the London Spitfire and Houston Outlaws are teaming up. This isn't a cup, but a gala. This is a gala, rather. This is more fancy. Everyone's gonna be in their best, their tuxedos, apparently. Um,
If you believe the naming, yeah.
yeah, possibly. But yeah, London, Houston. It's just like California Cup. They're gonna have an event in Houston and an event in London. And what I want to talk about this pairing first off. What do you think about this pairing? Did you expect London and Houston to pair up together to do one of these?
Yeah, no, we talked about doing Shock and Valiant, and why weren't the Gladiators included and whatever, and it at least made a little bit of sense, because they're still rebuilding a roster and that sort of thing. But yeah, London and Houston, I wouldn't have picked that pair. I don't know. Maybe it has more to do with C9 and Optic than it does London and Houston. I don't know, but. Um, Yeah, I mean, I have similar thoughts though about it, just in terms of, it's good to have this kind of off-season stuff to watch. It's good to have this kind of engagement. So no matter the results of the actual match, I think it's going to be good for both teams.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm all for all these events. It is a bit of a weird pairing, but it's cool. It's cool that the Houston fans get to experience the championship London Spitfire team, and even the London team gets some Houston action as well. And if you guys want to know more about the event, they were pretty vague, but there's going to be like two show matches, a couple like 1v1s, mystery heroes, some fans playing against the pros. They weren't specific about game mode stuff like that, but they got some events happening, and that's happening October 20th in London, and in January for Houston. And I think that might be one of the biggest parts of this announcement is that it would happen in January, which perhaps could mean Overwatch League is late January, February when the season starts if they're still having this event in January.
It's true. Yeah. I guess the other thing I mentioned, you reminded me about the game modes and mystery heroes and stuff, is that I don't think in this announcement it ever actually says that the London Spitfire will be playing the Houston Outlaws like in a proper match. So it might be, considering all the transatlantic travel and stuff, because it does say, 3 to 4 star players of both teams might be doing some of these, on the unofficial game modes. So that might be all it is, rather than an actual, home and home type of, actual match series. But still,
Yeah,
uh,
this
it's gonna be good.
this event definitely seems more fan focused than the California Cup, which the California Cup seems like a fun thing still, but filled with all the players. But I mean, traveling to London's a lot. Obviously, I believe that this event is happening when the London Spitfire team is actually going to London for the first time. So I believe all of London will be there. I don't know if all of Houston will be there, but I think they're just sort of tempering expectations by saying 3 to 4 star players, because I think they can get at least 3 people to come, if they can't,
Yeah.
I mean, like visiting London would be awesome if you're a Houston player, and Houston's mostly made up of people who probably haven't been to London before. So,
It's true.
so that's it for team event news. We have another event, an in-game event that was just teased today. I woke up to the nice little teaser on my Twitter feed. Halloween Terror is coming back, of course, and that nice little developer update. Jeff mentioned that events are pretty much going to be the same because they're focusing on rebuilding the game rather than the events, which both me and Joe are fine with. But yeah, Halloween Terror is coming back October 9th. Good old 8 days next week. And the teaser included a reskinned chateau, the famous deathmatch, the deathmatch map, of course. So it's looking like this usually with Halloween Terror we get like a PvE event, with Junkenstein involved. So it's possibly a PvE on Chateau this year. Maybe a completely different thing. Who knows?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I would tend to think that they're just gonna reskin the map like they've done for Hollywood in the past and stuff, rather
Yeah,
than moving Junkenstein over to the chateau. But it's possible, who knows?
yeah. Especially with I think your thing makes more sense, especially with Jeff just announcing we're not focusing on these too much. So yeah, reskinning. But even if we don't get something really cool, which I think a bunch of casual Overwatch fans really want, based off the summer games just being the same and everyone outraged about it, I still think like the reskins are cool, and making the maps more Halloween themed. Every Christmas I log on to Overwatch and just love seeing like Kings Row and all these places just being like Christmassy, and gets me in the holiday spirit. I love it.
Yeah, unless you have a game-changing thing where you can't hide from diva bombs behind the payload anymore.
Oh yeah,
But
that's pretty bad. I do. That does anger me, and all of a sudden I'm not in the holiday spirit anymore. You know what else? You know what else angered a lot of people? A nice little transition here to Kephrii. If you guys don't know who Kephrii is, he's probably been involved in Overwatch, I believe, since it began, pretty much. But he's been known as the Widow guy. He plays Widow a lot, and at some points, I think at the beginnings when we didn't have like as big of a competitive scene, people just considered him the best Widowmaker because he was the most popular Widowmaker streamer. And throughout history, he's continuously sort of done things to anger people. He's made himself out to be not a nice guy that people don't like too much. Mainly because he believes, I don't know, my personal take on it is he believes he is a widow worthy of Overwatch League, one of the best widows in the world, when in reality, he is not that good. And even if he is amazing at Widowmaker, he is not good at other characters, which you need to be in Overwatch League. But everyone is pretty angered because recently, about 4 days ago, Kephrii just nonchalantly tweeted at Overwatch DC, of course, the new Overwatch DC team, that he's looking for a scrim or a tryout because he's from the DC Northern Virginia area. He's looking for a scrim or a tryout. Someone replied to it saying maybe start scrimming and actually try to be in a contenders team and start grinding like all these other people are, and people will take you seriously for Overwatch League. Kephrii replied that contenders would be a huge financial step back from my successful streaming career. I have a wife, home, and bills to pay. Also, I can't simply go back in time and join. I play more Widow and will gladly improve that in a tryout if given the opportunity. So I mean, Kephrii, everyone's making, in my opinion, to start this off, I think everyone's making a bigger deal out of it. He's just asking for a scrim or a tryout. But everyone is getting very upset. I don't think he deserves to be in Overwatch League, but a scrim or a tryout is no big deal, honestly. But everyone's freaking out mainly because they see all these people trying their hardest and sacrificing everything, and Kephrii basically just came out and said, I'm not willing to sacrifice my wife, home, bills, or anything like that to move to contenders, and I want to be given what I want anyways. What do you think about Kephrii's want to be in Overwatch League despite not trying too hard?
I think it's worth mentioning his original tweet has sparked a copy pasta now, which is kind of funny. I saw like a British like broadcast.gg caster or something was saying, hey, London Spitfire, can I get a casting job? But no, it did strike me as odd, definitely to see that, just because you don't, for all we know, these are things that happen, more often than we would think, maybe in this first season, but to publicly sort of just tweet at them rather than sending a professional email or trying to make more concrete connections. It's an odd approach, certainly. And then, yes, so then leading into our discussion here, talking about that, to make the assumption that just because he says, I'm a DC/Northern Virginia local and would love the opportunity to try out. And so the implication sort of is that his geographic area, and at least I don't even want to say at least pretty good skill, because he's a much better widow than I will ever be in my life.
Oh, yeah.
But being able to play his scan hero as well and being from DC, the implication is that that's enough to be seriously considered by the DC team. Which then obviously that's our discussion we want to talk about. Is that enough? What do we think about team identity and player nationality and that sort of thing? That's what we're going to spend some time on here.
Oh yeah, we're gonna dive deep into that right now. I definitely I I do think it's. I mean, if Kephrii was worthy of it, despite not trying, and had enough skill to be in the Overwatch League and was very good in a tryout, then he deserved a spot, no doubt about it. The fact that he is using I'm a DC local to attract them is kind of weird. Like that doesn't automatically get you on a team in the Overwatch League as unless you're the Shanghai Dragons so far. Um, I mean, this is a really big discussion going on in the offseason, especially with these new teams. Um, I mean, to start it off, I'm super fired up. I told you before this podcast, I'm super fired up about this. Um, so there's some rumors about the Paris expansion team looking to go down the EU player route, and everyone's super excited about that. Everybody wants. It seems like everyone really would like some nationality included in their hometown teams. To the point, it's come to the point, and I've seen it the most out of London Spitfire fans at this point. And it has come to the point where some people are arguing that London Spitfire may regret picking up their entire Korean roster at this point. And when I've seen comments like this, that Spitfire might have been a questionable decision to do this. I think saying that it is a questionable decision is your question is immediately answered when you look at the results of Overwatch League Season 1 and you see that they won the whole thing. It's like people have completely forgotten that the London Spitfire was the best team last year, and I really, really don't think they regret picking up their Korean roster. And it's crazy to me that London Spitfire is it's the only team I see that argument for. I don't see it. None of the American teams, nobody, there aren't any Houston fans, there aren't any Philly fans, there aren't any fans there that are like, I'm upset that I don't have a full Philly roster. I'm upset that I don't even have a full American roster. Nobody, no American fans do that. Over in China, you have the opposite, where the Chinese fans are like, I'm upset that my team decided to do that and pick up an entire Chinese roster because we're terrible. And we went 0-40. You have the opposite over there. And then you go over to Great Britain, you go over to England, and you take a look at the London fans, and you can't help but say, your team won the grand finals in season 1, and you're still here begging for different players? It's insane to me that you have decided that you don't want to win the championship, and it's making me think that you guys have the snottiest fan base out of anybody in the league so far. If winning the championship isn't enough for you, you're like, no, I don't want to win the championship. I would rather get 10th place and have a full British roster. Why? And honestly, if we take a look at the World Cup and the Great British team, I thought it out, and I believe that if they had a full British roster, they would probably be in about 10th place. Florida and Shanghai would still be a little bit worse than them, but honestly, the British players are not good enough to get the London Spitfire in the playoffs, at least. I think everyone has to admit that. And it's crazy to me that some people are arguing they actually would rather have that. Even Stylosa, he is a part of the team, is saying we should at least be required to have some national players. He's asking for a worse team. It's crazy to me that some people are that nationalist. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it was. Well, the other thing is to think about that in the context of like traditional sports. That would you ever see, um, for example, we're from Indiana. Would you ever see the Indianapolis Colts fans demanding that the team would hire exclusively, the Warren Central quarterback? It comes out of high school, whatever. The metaphor gets a little bit lost there, but yeah, just to see that at all. Okay, and I guess it is important to mention that not everybody is asking like specifically to have like pure pure rosters from whatever region. But yeah, you mentioned Styliso. I'm looking at this tweet from September 23rd, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he says, wait, and this was in response to the Paris group stage of the World Cup, right? We
Yeah.
talked about it last week. We had all this big, giant crowd, always cheering for Team France. It's cool to watch. It's cool to listen to. And so Sty says, can you imagine how insane the local followings would be if all OWL teams consisted of nationals of their respective countries, or at least there was an enforced quota of regional players per roster. Each region has enough good players to make that happen. And then presumably there was some sort of giggle at the end. And then he says, okay, let's get stuck into it. But so the comments of this is interesting because Jane gets involved, coach from Team Canada, assistant coach Dallas Fuel, gets involved also. Somebody replies, I'd rather see the best players compete in the league. And I mentioned Jane a couple times, on this podcast. And in general, I tend to agree with the things he says. But I thought it was interesting the position he took, because he says this argument about, well, I would rather see the best compete regardless of where they're living, where they're from. He says this argument's dumb. Stop parroting it. He says I'm not arguing for region locking for team rosters or for regional quotas for teams, but these shouldn't be necessary to see local talent on local teams, which is true, but it's not. There are different valid ways of constructing a roster for sure, and there are different fairly successful ways that can be managed. Again, thinking about this in the World Cup, in the context of the World Cup, some people on Reddit are saying, well, what happens when we get to season 3, presumably, and they start doing localized stages or localized group stages or whatever, and we have several different stadiums. And London Spitfire is playing at home, and it's a Korean team, and they're in a London arena. And what happens? Is the crowd going to support them and all this? And I mean, the question is, are they going to support a full Korean team, as well as they would a full English team? And for the World Cup, that's the point of the World Cup, right? Is to have the team, with the full English roster. But for something like the Overwatch League, it doesn't make as much sense, or it's certainly not as necessary to create that kind of engagement just purely geographically. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm with you. It's a weird sort of question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, apparently the answer to will London Spitfire fans support a full Korean roster is no to some of those fans, which is also it's very snotty in my opinion, because me and you are sitting here in Indiana, we don't even get a team, like, and you have the best team in the league, and you're like, no, I'm not going to support them. Like, come on. You're lucky enough to have a team supporting your city, and you're just going to sit here and be a fan of some other team. That also annoys me, because I would like to be from a city that gets to have an Overwatch League team. But yeah, to go back to what you're saying about the Colts, I mean, Andrew Luck's not from Indiana, but I went to a Colts game yesterday. Everyone has an Andrew Luck jersey. Nobody, there's some T.Y. Hilton, some Pat McAfee, who isn't even on the team anymore. But the only recognizable player on the team is Andrew Luck. And nobody's like, this guy's not from Indiana. Get him out of here. They're like, he is a savior. He is a god. And he is the best player on our team and the best player in this league. I don't care where he is from. It's like London fans, you have Prophet, who's arguably one of the best players now, and nobody's holding him up like that. It's very interesting to me to go over to Overwatch League. I mean, if any of this conversation happened on the NFL subreddit or something like that, everyone would call that person insane. If somebody said, the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they're regretting not having more Philadelphia players on their team, everyone would downvote that guy and say they won the Super Bowl. Why would they care? So it's just crazy to me that it almost seems like people are like putting fandom and how many fans you have over winning. And in the end, I really believe that winning is going to get you the most fans. I think that despite Dallas Fuel having tons of streamers and big names on their team, I think they got less viewership and less fans paying attention to Overwatch League once their team was clearly not good enough. Even though people are measuring it by like social media and like how many bits were donated and stuff like that, I still think that the Dallas Fuel, despite having a big fan base, was still a big loser in season one. I don't think they're satisfied. I think London is pretty satisfied despite not having the biggest fan base. I think winning season one is enough to satisfy Jack and Cloud9. I don't doubt it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, I have tons. God, I have so much to say. And also, I mean, that's the point of the World Cup. To counter Stylos's point is the point of the World Cup is for things like we saw in France, not the point of Overwatch League whatsoever. I mean, it's almost like Stylosa wants to turn the Overwatch League into the World Cup. Then kind of what's the point of the World Cup if all of a sudden we're requiring London to be made of London players? Then it's like, okay, well now we go to the World Cup and it's like London just transfers and change their name to England all of a sudden, and it's just kind of it's kind of weird as well. If I don't think this argument's going to go anywhere. I don't think Nate Nancer's going to change anything or require anybody to have region locked. Like even if they have require only 3 players, that's going to upset the owners. And the owners, I think we have to remember, paid upwards of 20 to 50 million to be in this league. They don't want restrictions on their teams. They want to be able to build the best teams and win.
They paid for the league, period. That's just how it goes.
Straight up. The fact that I mean, if I were an owner, I'd be upset that the fans are like, if I were the owner of the London Spitfire, I'd be upset that the fans are like, give me better players that are like the same as me in my nationality. I'd be like, we won. Are you guys okay? We won. We won the championship. You don't like our players? Like, I would be very upset. Like, I paid good money to be in this league, and everybody's turning on me. When my GM, my coach, everyone that I hired was the best in this league, and everyone's like, nah, you're not good enough still. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I don't think Nate's going to be promoting what the fans want because the owners don't really want it.
Yeah, there's nothing I would have added to that other than what you just did about the World Cup. Yeah, that's we're all sort of riding that hype right now, but you know that's what the World Cup is for, and we're gonna finish that here in 3 weeks, and then we're gonna move on to the regular season.
Yeah,
you know it's the way they've intended it to be.
I mean, to talk more about the Paris team picking up EU players, and I believe one of the Chinese teams is rumored to go for a full Chinese roster. I mean, just to ask you, I mean, how do you think these two teams will fare in comparison to people who are not only recruiting players based off of their nationality, but they're just, I mean, they have less restrictions in their recruiting, just basically saying this guy's a good player and then not looking at his nationality at all. What advantages do you think the Paris team and whatever Chinese team decides to do this can compete with these teams that have no restrictions on which players they pick up?
Yeah, I mean it's a risk certainly if you're going to go that way. I think there's been a rumor, you know, that it's like Hangzhou was going to sign most of Team China. That could pay off for them. You know, we've seen to Team China as a team that the players that we're actually talking about here are very good. You know, they're expected to do pretty well here in the World Cup. But yeah, the restriction, the limit there, you know, your hands are tied in lots of different situations, and to have to try to navigate that in addition to, especially for these new teams, you know, trying to make a foothold at all in the league and among the league's fans and that stuff, it's just going to be really difficult.
Oh yeah. I mean, and people are eating this stuff up, like I mentioned earlier in that thread about the rumor that Paris is going full EU. Everyone was like, "This is the best decision possible," and uh, honestly, it could possibly be. I mean, we've seen there is some really good EU talent out there, um, who can possibly compete with the rest of the Overwatch League, and there is some very good. We saw the Chinese World Cup team looks great. They really do. But we already know that their best player, Gushui, is going to be going somewhere else and not with the rest of his Chinese World Cup team. So they're already losing a really good player. I don't know. Just it seems like going for that strategy has some risks, has a lot of risks. And while you can sort of gain the upper hand in fandom and getting, I mean, you're getting the argument here is as Paris, you're not only getting people from Paris to be fans with you, but you're getting people from the rest of the EU to be fans of you instead of London. In the end, if London wins season 2 once again and Paris barely squeaks out playoffs or is in the middle of the pack, I think those people outside of Paris will jump on the London bandwagon. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna play out however it plays out, in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but yeah, I'm not convinced it's gonna be a big issue as big an issue as people are gonna make it.
I mean,
It's probably fair to say.
I don't think it's that big of an issue. It's crazy to me that we're still talking about this after we saw a team the only team who attempted to do what they want to happen go 0-40. It's crazy to me that they saw that and they said, we should still try to be doing this. And then seeing the best team in the league were completely disregard their city-based ways and win the entire thing wasn't good enough for them. It's just crazy to me that this all has happened, and it doesn't matter apparently.
And my Fusion fan self pointing out that the second best team in the league also went, incredibly international. I think by the time they had their 12-player roster from season 1, I think they said it was like 8 or 9 countries represented in 12 players, and that worked really well too. It's
and
definitely can be done.
Even the Dallas Fuel, who everyone is arguing they had the biggest fan base in season 1, was made up. Their original announcement was, look at all these different flags we got. So we got everyone from everywhere. I mean, the people who want localization and nationalization, in the end, would I be happy for a little bit if the Detroit Lions had an entire Detroit roster? Yeah. But then when they started losing, I'd be like, okay, time to not go with that strategy anymore, please. I would like to win.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next topic, because at this point I'm just going over and over these points. Hero specialization. You want to introduce this one?
Yeah. So last week we came off of. Let me pull up this page here. Last week we worked from a write-up posted and Reddit about Mercy. Right, it was a year now since the rework of Mercy, trying to look at the state of what things are now, supports and just the meta in general. But so now moving past that, we've got a similar sort of write-up, a link here that somebody did. Looks like Switch is the name of the person, so that's cool. But about season 12 and hero diversity and the way people are playing heroes here in season 12. And it's pretty interesting to look at, notably, especially because they did some analysis on, I think it was through Overbuff, which I'm trying to figure out where that's written, because I know it's written somewhere. If it was Overbuff, that's worth pointing out that obviously they can only read players or profiles that are not private, which is notable. In fact, here, this is, I'm trying to find this. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So however they got their data, consider there might be a private profile issue, but looking at here, it's worth noting that more than 10% of players in every rank, every elo are one tricking a specific hero, and that they define that with more than 80% usage time in season 12, and about 55% in all ranks are specialized on a single hero. More than 50%, less than 80% of your playtime on one hero. So that's actually a majority, which has actually been increasing steadily all the way from season 4. There's a chart here. It was something like maybe 20% in season 4, and now specializing or one tricking above 50% of the time now is the majority now in season 12. But particularly what I wanted to point out here was the actual heroes that these PC players specifically are maining in season 12. Just because that's a really interesting list. It has it divided up by rank. And they point out generally they all are meta heroes, like the top five in GM are Ana, Reinhardt, Lucio, D.Va, Zarya. So it makes sense. Winston's up there, Brig is up there, but specifically, this trend I noticed in all 7 of the ranks from bronze to GM, Reinhardt actually is either number 1 or number 2 out of all of the heroes that people main. Out of all the heroes people main, number 1 from silver to diamond, number 2 in bronze, master, and GM. But that particular part I thought was interesting. But just in general, to take a look at the way this sort of thing is fallen out, because we do see lots and lots of supports. Like Ana is really high up there too, especially as the rank goes up. She's number 1 pick in both Master and GM in order to main. But we see Lucio, we see Zen, we see Brig, we see Mercy in most of these columns here, as well as lots of tanks. We see Winston and Ryan and Zarya and D.Va in a good chunk, especially at the higher ranks. We see the more tanks, but to see that codified is interesting. But even we talked about, or people talked about the introduction of Brigitte like season 10, I guess it was now. And they said, tanks are going to die because nobody wants to play tank anymore because this is over stun or whatever people were calling it. I don't know. But yeah, clearly that's not the case anymore. That's what am I trying to say here? People are coming together. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and through it all, the tanks have actually been a decent constant. Particularly Reinhardt again, because he's probably one of the ones that's been most complained about. But nope. Anyway, it's an interesting graphic to look at. It's on Reddit. There's a thread about hero specialization in season 12. You can probably search that. But
yeah,
to see how players are getting more specific, and then what specifically heroes they're playing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm not too surprised to see Ryan at the top of most things. Ryan's just like, I don't know. He's overall a good hero to just be a main of because he's a good tank hero for solo queue. Dive is an extremely coordinated and hard composition to do with Winston. That's why you see more Winston mains in Grandmaster on this list and towards Master. And he is nowhere to be found, diamond, plat, gold, silver, bronze. Because dive is just harder to run and it requires more coordination. So more often you're going to see just a heavy tank composition with that big shield that Reinhardt has. So it doesn't surprise me for solo queue mains to main Reinhardt. Ana's up there right now, which makes sense because she's back in the meta. And just seeing tanks and supports up towards the top makes sense, not only because of how good tanks and supports are right now, but also because there are very few tanks and supports. So it's a lot easier to just main one of them. Whereas DPS heroes there are many damage heroes in the game. So maining one of them is a lot. If you're a DPS player, you need to be more versatile, basically. So not only are tanks and supports very good right now, but there are a bunch of different attack heroes that are good, and you need to be versatile if you're a DPS player. Yeah, and as far as season 12, like increasing throughout the seasons, the amount of people who have gone to mains or one tricks, that also makes sense to me personally, because having a one trick or having a main means you win more, honestly. Like, my best hero is Diva, and I would say I'm like almost a diamond level Diva, but the rest of my heroes, I'm gold plat with them. So if I decide to just use Diva, I'm going to win more games than if I decide to use my variety of heroes I can play at a decent level. And unfortunately, I have decided to use my variety, because it would just be boring to play Diva over and over again. But it makes sense. The people who want to win are just focusing on that one hero that they are best at, because that's how they win. Yeah. Anything else to say?
I guess, yeah, you're right that it's important to note that this particular chart we're looking at is of people who are maining a hero and not usage in general.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how that compares. I don't have that pulled up, but yeah, there's still definitely patterns we can look at here.
Oh yeah. Hero prevalence and win rate is the next chart. Actually, we got Ana's pretty high in Grandmaster as far as win rate goes. And as far as that goes, not surprised, because Ana's a very high skilled healer. So, and she's very, very good, and this is exactly how it went when Ana was back in the meta. When she was first introduced, the GMs were amazing at her. And she was in meta, and the bronzes and the silvers and the golds were like, she's in meta, but they weren't good enough to play her. So, her win rate would be down, even though her play rate is up in those areas. As far as I'm surprised to see Lucio's win rate so high in Grandmaster as well. And a lot of other takes pretty much the cake on all these charts, though.
Yeah, we're definitely not at a 6-hero game yet.
Oh no.
Although if this current PTR patch has anything to say about it, we're down to a 26-hero game instead of a 27-hero game. But hopefully that just means they're fixing Mr. Shieldman.
Yeah, hopefully that does. As far as hero main win rates go, so this is based off win rates for people who have mains in each, or for people who main. And
before anybody yells at us on Twitter, even though nobody's yelled at us on Twitter, I realize there are 28 heroes now. So I guess we're down to 27. So
29 soon, dude. 29 soon.
Yeah, BlizzCon, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh God, another thing to talk about in the podcast.
Yeah. Anyway, you were talking about a chart.
Yeah. So the I believe this is the last chart on the page. Yeah, last chart on the page is hero main win rates based off of Reinhardt, Diva, Ana, Moira, Mercy, Lucio, which are the heroes they were looking at, because they're the most mained. And not surprising, most of them are just vertically upward charts saying that Grandmasters have higher win rates on these heroes. But it's interesting to see that some are like Moira mains at Grandmaster have a 58% win rate, but Moira mains at Bronze have a 47%, and that's like the biggest difference. And I think this chart just shows, like, it goes to show how difficult the hero is to play. Lucio is like pretty even. It looks like Platinum Lucios have a bigger win rate than Grandmaster. They look so close. Does it say?
It looks like GM's a little bit higher.
Okay, it's
but
very close.
They're essentially the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of these are actually pretty crazy. I think Platinum Mercies have a higher win rate than Master Mercy mains. Yeah, so it's just interesting, but I believe that's, in my opinion, that's based off the difficulty of the hero. I think Lucio and Mercy are some of the easier supports to play. Ana and Moira are a little bit tougher. So it makes sense that Grandmasters have mastered those heroes a little bit better. But they're basically saying Diva mains. I'm one of those. Diva mains at Gold, Platinum, and Diamond are just have no difference, huh? Their win rates are pretty even. Any thoughts on this chart?
Not beyond that, no.
Yeah. I think those were two pretty good topics. I mean, we're going to continue with these topic-heavy shows since we've got no events throughout October, pretty much. I guess we could talk about the London Spitfire Outlaws Gala, because that's in October. Is the California Cup's got to be soon, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know when for sure.
But that's possibly in October, maybe.
The 20th. The 20th, actually.
They're on the same day. That's the same day.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that is the same exact day. October 20th in London and October 20th is the first one in Santa Ana. Yeah.
And then November 10th is the second California match.
After BlizzCon. So I guess we have those events to talk about. Unfortunately, we can't spread them out because they're not going to be on the same podcast, but
we might have to spread them out.
Yeah, if they're that extensive. But maybe we'll get into Open Division too, because that's what Open Division's the only thing going on right now, pretty much. But yeah, this is a pretty good episode. We'll continue with the in-depth topics. I enjoy talking about topics a lot. Do you enjoy it, Joe? Should we go with some more topics here?
Yeah, it's gonna be good. And if anybody has any suggestions, we can send those in.
Oh yeah, and I'm about to mention our email, so you can send them in. Our social media, you can follow us on our personal Twitter accounts. Mine is JWGeorgeIV. Joe's is Kirkpatrick_Inc. That's INC. And then our show has a Twitter page, which has gained a nice little. We've gained some followers this past week. On the Flank Show, look at our tweets over there. You can also tweet at us if you want us to talk about something. But if you don't want to tweet at us, you want to be more professional, unlike Kephrii, who's he tweeted right at the DC Overwatch team. If you want to email us, be a little more professional, we have an email ontheflankshow@gmail.com. Of course, if you're listening to this, you found it somehow, but if you want to listen to it in a different way, you can find us at ontheflank.podbean.com. You can find us on my YouTube, John George, which is linked on my Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, which is my favorite personal way to listen to us, because you can just press the subscribe button and it comes to you every single week on the podcast app on your iPhone if you have one. If you don't have an iPhone, you can use Spotify as an option on an Android phone for a good podcast app. And we are now officially on Spotify, and we're super excited to be on there. Yeah, that's pretty much all we got for this week. Happy October, everybody. Enjoy a nice little break from Overwatch. Thank you guys for listening.